Hello everyone, I hope this video finds you and your loved ones in good health. On April 30th, Pancreatic Cancer Action Network will be hosting what it calls its Purple Stride event, its biggest event of the year for fundraising money for research and support for pancreatic cancer patients. And one of the things we're planning to do leading up to the fundraiser is share the stories of ourselves or our loved ones who were affected by pancreatic cancer in some way. So I thought, because I'm raising this money to honor my father's memory, may his soul rest in peace, I thought I'd share his story with pancreatic cancer as part of this campaign. But before I start, please note that this is a story and experience about cancer. So if you feel this may be a bit triggering, please tread cautiously. But I call it my father's pancreatic cancer story. It was late 2017. My father was feeling particularly fatigued after coming home from work. At first, we thought it was just a cold, but after a couple of days, we realized it was not just any illness. The fatigue kept going day in and day out until my father's skin started to turn yellow. It was then we knew it was something else, and my dad needed to act quickly. He didn't want to take any chances. After a series of tests, it was what we all feared. My dad had cancer, pancreatic cancer. I could tell my dad was scared and sad and angry, but he kept putting a smile on his face and kept his spirit up every single day for Mom and I. He was being brave. His next act of bravery came with chemotherapy. Chemo isn't easy, but my dad wanted to give himself a chance, and he did. After a few chemotherapies, the doctors said that a stomach surgery might be worth it. They emphasized that they could not make any promises, but they said a certain 9-hour stomach surgery could potentially kick the cancer. My father went for it. On the day of the surgery, I hugged my dad, told him I loved him, and that I would see him on the other side as he was escorted to the room for the procedure. I could see on his face that he was scared, but I had never seen him be so brave. 1 week after the surgery, I was visiting my dad in the hospital as he was recovering. The surgeon and his team walked in. I sat next to my dad, who somehow seemed so calm. The surgeon reported that the results seemed promising and there was reason for cautious optimism. After a few more testings, my father was miraculously cancer-free. It was truly a miracle. Over the next year, my dad was practically living a normal life again. He took a trip to Florida with my mom. He took a trip to Arizona with his brothers. He was going to and from work as if he never had cancer. Yet, my dad insisted to his doctors to still check him every few weeks. He knew how tricky cancer was. He didn't want to take any chances. After about a year of checkups, the doctors had determined that my father was right. The cancer was back. Yet my father did not seem fazed. He knew this was a possibility and was ready to take it head on. He started having chemotherapy every other week. He didn't want to take any chances. After a few months of chemotherapy, the doctors determined that a surgery was not an option this time because it was a blood clot. My father still did not seem fazed. He was determined to keep fighting. He continued with his chemotherapy every other week. He wanted to give himself a chance. After a few months, the cancer cells only seemed to increase, but my father kept fighting. He discussed with the doctors different approaches to the chemotherapy they could take. Sometimes the cancer cells went down, sometimes the cancer cells went back up. But my dad kept fighting. After about a year since the cancer returned, my father was having trouble walking. The chemo was starting to take its toll. In retrospect, we learned that the doctors may have already given up at this point, but my dad kept fighting. He continued with his chemotherapy treatment until he literally could not walk anymore. On the morning of January 1st, 2021, my father had received news that his mother had passed away. My father was now not just fighting cancer until the end, but was also grieving his mother. 2 weeks later, my father literally could no longer walk and needed a tube to help him breathe. The doctors just wanted to make him comfortable at this point, but my dad still somehow had the will to keep fighting. Even after hearing that he only had about a week to live, my dad elected to have chemotherapy one last time. He wanted to take a chance. After having the fortune to spend one last week together as a family at home, and after 3 long, long, hard-fought years, my father passed away peacefully in his sleep on the morning of January 31st, 2021. My father's cancer story is bittersweet to say the least. On the one hand, it is inspiring because he fought until literally the very end and lived his life to the fullest. On the other hand, I cannot help but feel heartbroken, not just because my father only lived to be 60 years old, but also because it didn't work out despite how brave he was and how hard he had fought. He took a chance with a 9-hour stomach surgery that he was not sure was going to work. He took in more chemotherapy than his doctor suggested. And after all that courage and effort, the cancer still won. It took me time to make sense of my father's cancer story. How could someone be so brave and fight so hard and still not have it work out for them? After having a year to grieve and reflect, I realized the issue is that we simply do not have the tools and resources to properly treat pancreatic cancer. That is why I want to share my father's story, to help people understand that we need more funding and research to truly defeat this deadly disease. No matter how determined and how courageous a cancer survivor is, they can only go so far if we do not have the proper tools and research to treat them. So I ask you to please consider donating to my Purple Stride fundraiser, not only to honor my father's memory, but also to give future pancreatic cancer patients a chance. And that is my father's pancreatic cancer story.